Honourable members, the Deputy Speaker.
Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? And I call the member for Fowler.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart to honour two beautiful children from our community, Catherine and Harry. Catherine was 5 years old. Her baby brother was 14 months old. They were taken from us far too soon after the devastating accident in Cabramatta last Wednesday afternoon. This statement is above all to honour them, two precious children deeply loved by their parents, Sokram and Bunti Tha. That very day, Catherine had received an award at kindergarten. Harry was still a baby, with his whole life ahead of him. In one unthinkable moment, Sok and Bunti lost both of their children. Our whole community has felt the weight of that heartbreak. Sok came to Australia from Cambodia in 2018 to build a better life. Bunti, also born in Cambodia, arrived in 2003. Like so many families in Fowler, they worked hard and sacrificed quietly, pouring everything they had into their children. They're exactly the kind of family that makes our community strong, humble, hardworking and full of love. Fowler is one of the most multicultural places in Australia. We come from many countries, we speak many languages, we hold different faiths and different traditions. But last Wednesday, none of that mattered. Strangers did not stand back. They ran forward, motorists stopped their cars, members of the public worked together to lift the vehicle. Others performed CPR. People did everything humanly possible to save Catherine and Harry. That is what being Australian truly means. We come from every corner of the world, but in a moment of need, we stand together as one. In the days that followed, the community wraps its arms around Sok and Bunti. People came forward with help, with donations, with prayers, not because they were asked, but because they could not bear to let a grieving family stand alone. A tragedy like this leaves more than one heart broken. There are others touched by that day who will carry it quietly for the rest of their lives. They are in my thoughts too. I place on record my deepest thanks to every person who rushed to help, every first responder, every neighbour, and everyone who has surrounded this family with love. To Sok and Bunti, we remember Catherine and Harry in this Parliament. Our community mourns with you, stands with you, and will carry you in the days and years ahead. May Catherine and Harry be remembered always. May their memory live on in the hearts of their family and in the way Cabramatta and Fowler came together as one that day. Thank you.
I thank the member for Fowler. I understand the member for Pearce would like to present a copy of their speech for incorporation into the Hansard in accordance with the resolution agreed to on the 6th of November 2025.
That's clear, thank you.
I thank the member for Pearce. That was now being collected by the attendants to be given to the clerk. Thank you, member for Pearce.
Thank you.
And I call the member for Clare.
Deputy Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge and recognise the great work of the Rotary Club of Blaney. Since 1956, the Rotary Club of Blaney has made a significant difference to the Central West through countless community projects, including fundraising efforts and providing support to local initiatives and organisations with compassion, kindness and generosity. The Rotary Club of Blaney is a small club that punches well above its weight. It has delivered and supported key projects in the region, including a palliative care ward at Blaney Health Service, the community bus, the establishment of the local swimming pool, Churchill Rotary Lookout, and delivering projects for young people, including Model United Nations, Youth Exchange, Leadership Awards and driver awareness courses. Their current projects include providing domestic violence escape bags, which are placed around the community for people experiencing physical and emotional domestic violence to access, and a toy library. This initiative has been running for 1.5 years with over 1,000 toys borrowed. Recently, Blaney Rotary celebrated an incredible 70 years of service to the community at its local annual changeover dinner. I'd like to congratulate those members who received Paul Harris Fellowships on the night, including Michael Baker, Della Baker, Frank Akehurst, Greg Hooper and Graham May. Well done and thank you to outgoing President Rowan Hoadley and his team for a great year, and a hearty congratulations to incoming President Heather Ferguson. We wish her and the new executive team the very best for the year ahead. As a member of the Rotary Club of Blaney shared with me recently, we work as a team, we do everything we do to make our community stronger and better, and will rise up to take any challenge. Deputy Speaker, as the late great Slim Dusty once sang, "Let me sing where the rafters ring in an old-time country hall." And Mandurama Public Hall is over 100 years old, and it continues to be the cornerstone of the community. From hosting christenings to council meetings to weddings to working bees, it's a vital place for the community to come together and connect. The Hall's energetic committee don't look for recognition but are highly deserving of community appreciation. So today I'm very pleased to thank President Deirdre Malloy. Deirdre has been involved in the Mandurama Public Hall since she was 17 and has been the president for an incredible 54 years. Secretary Tanya Malloy, Treasurer Joanna Richardson and committee member Christine Heppelstone. I sincerely thank the Mandurama Public Hall Committee for the fantastic work its members do. Our country halls bring people together in good times and bad. They help keep our communities strong. Mandurama and its districts would not be the same without its iconic community hall, and I again thank and congratulate the committee members of the mighty Mandurama Public Hall. Our community is very grateful for all that they do for us.
I thank the member for Clare, and I call the Minister for Northern Australia and Resources.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Albanese Labor government is delivering record funding for the Rockingham and Kwinana region. We're investing over $550 million in significant road upgrades to Ankertel Road, including an overpass at the Rockingham Road intersection, which means it'll be easier and quicker for all the workers and the truckies and their freight to get in and out of the all-important Kwinana industrial area. Now, that's really good news for all the workers, the thousands of WA workers in Kwinana, because that industry has been the backbone of the Western Australian economy since it first got started in the 50s, and this multi-million-dollar investment will ensure that the Kwinana industrial area remains the driver of a future made in Australia. This Labor government is delivering bulk billing GP practices right across Kwinana and Rockingham. There are now 15 medical practices across those two towns that fully bulk bill your GP appointments. Labor believes in Medicare, and we invest in Medicare so that the community of Brand can get the health care they deserve. Recently, I visited the Waikiki GP Super Clinic and the Rockingham Medical and Dental Centre, both of which are now fully bulk billing practices thanks to the Labor government. I met with Dr Kieran Putapar and practice manager Keely Clapton at the Waikiki Super GP Clinic, and I thank them and their team for the fantastic work they do for their community. I want to thank also the Head of Operations Katrina Rippon and Practice Manager Jackie King at the Rockingham Medical and Dental Centre for their commitment to providing quality healthcare for families right across Rockingham. And I want to thank all the GPs and all the staff, all the workers of those practices right across the suburbs of Rockingham and Kwinana for the work they do for their community. These are vital services and the importance of providing free and quality healthcare for the community cannot be understated. Last week, I took part in the sod turning of the St Pat's housing project in Kwinana with WA Premier Roger Cook, State Minister for Housing and Works John Carey, and my friend Kwinana Mayor Peter Feasey. This is a major investment in the Kwinana community. The Albanese Labor government is putting $3.8 million to this important project through the Social and Affordable Housing Investment Fund. And I want to thank my friend and colleague Minister Claire O'Neill for her leadership in getting more Aussies into their own homes. Together with the Cook Labor government in Western Australia and St Pat's, we are delivering 26 new homes for those in need. This is an example of two great Labor governments working with an excellent community-based organisation to get things done for the Kwinana community. I want to thank Michael and the whole St Pat's team for the wonderful work they do, not only in Rockingham and Kwinana, but right across Perth's southern suburbs, looking after people in need.
I thank the Minister for the member for Maranoa.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I want to bring to the Parliament's attention a matter I raised previously around the Wombai Wind Farm. and the human toll that it's having, particularly on the Duffs and the Franses. So the Franses in particular, 80-year-old retirees, farmed and want to continue to farm next to their son, have a 260-metre tower, multiple 260-metre towers, hovering over their homes, less than 1.5 kilometres from their homes. This has been something that is an absolute eyesore and a disgrace that the former Labor government in Queensland allowed the planning process to proceed. Since that, I've written to the Queensland government asking them to not only review the code, in which they have made small steps in reviewing and ensuring that there are better planning processes to protect non-host farms, to be able to give them the dignity and respect they deserve. And I've also written to the federal government to ensure that there's consideration given to any federal funding around supporting renewable projects that don't take into account the non-hosts in making sure there's proper planning. And 1.5 kilometres from a house is not enough. And if you go to the Francis home, you only have to sit at their front veranda. And these 80-year-old retirees are sitting there with these things swishing over their heads. In their retirement, they cannot live in a property they have worked hard to be able to afford and to live near their son. And after writing to the Queensland Government, while I congratulate them on some changes, I am appalled by the fact that they are not prepared to heed what has happened to the Franses. And I would say to the Queensland Government, go out and do not rely on the department that has allowed this planning monstrosity to take place to continue to advise you. Get in the car, it's less than 3 hours from Brisbane, and go and sit at the Duffs and the Frances front yards and look at this and understand the impact of non-hosts. We are not saying stop renewable energy on these farms if they want to do it, but for those that do not want it, they should not have this imposed on them. There should also be proper testing of the acoustics. The Frances are putting up with over 37 decibels, the modelling is showing. It could be as high as 44. The Code 23, in which this was approved under, says they can only go to 35. And yet they are still looking to investigate this. You do not need to model this. You need to go and fix this for the Frances, and you need to actually make sure that we change the code to set these towers back 3 kilometres from the boundaries of properties, allowing the non-hosts to negotiate it to come closer, up to 1.5, if they so wish. That gives the power to the non-host, not the renewable companies. And these renewable companies need to put deposits down. They are not bound to have decommissioning deposits where if you have a gas or coal mine, you must put a bond down to decommission it. This takes away the uncertainty and the pain that regional Australia is feeling, and people like the Frances and Duffs who have worked hard all their lives and having been screwed over by state and federal governments.
I thank the member. I call the member for Lawler.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, Deputy Speaker, I have been pleased across the last few weeks to get to a few Werribee VFL games with the Werribee Football Club. They've been on a winning streak, 4 games in a row, puts us second on the ladder. And, you know, the thrill of going to watch the local boys. We've got 5 local boys playing for Werribee this year. It's fantastic. Whether it's watching Jordan Busuttil kick a goal from the centre, Noah Tullio run into the goal line to snap a quick one, or Josh Callett recovering from injury but can't wait to see him back, or Jake Smith on the wing. It's fantastic to watch those local boys strutting their stuff at Chirnside Park. And to watch Ajang Kwao Mun learn his craft in the ruck and start kicking goals for Werribee. It's been fantastic. And I want to thank Mark Penaluna for the great welcome that he always gives me when I make it to the club. Whether it's visiting classrooms like I did recently at the Grange and at Westgrove across the last couple of weeks, talking to young students about civics and citizenship. Amazing, the learning they're doing around the 3 levels of governments. And I always do a bit of a pop quiz, and these young people are being beautifully prepared for our democracy. They understand the separation of powers, they understand the 3 levels of government and some of those responsibilities. Or whether it's attending a refugee week with the Australian Karen Organisation event, as I did on the weekend, or attend the Tian Festival with our local Punjabi women, and a shout out to Sharma Bungu, who's been running that festival now for 16 years. Or listening on Saturday night an event to Auntie Judy deliver a beautiful welcome to country in language. My community reflects modern Australia. It reflects our country beautifully wherever you touch down in our country, in my community. And this Labor government, this federal Albanese Labor government, is focused on the welfare of everyone across this country, but also focused on our place in the world and creating a future where we all get a fair go. And that's why this week and today is so important, because we're going to pass the tax reforms. They'll pass the House today, and they're designed to support us, to support our community, to value the work, the labour of every worker and create equity in the way workers' incomes are taxed compared to investors, creating a level playing field so those young boys on that footy field can buy that first home. So people across my community, the thousands of people who've accessed the 5% deposit, the 1,800 people I've witnessed become citizens across the last month, go from permanent residency to proud Australian citizens. It's always a pleasure to be with them. And we're looking after small business. We've got the loss carryback provisions coming in. We're making the 20K instant asset write-off permanent. We're looking after people across this country because we want to build together a wonderful Australia where everybody belongs and everybody gets a leg on the step on the ladder of opportunity.
Thank you. The member, and I call the member for Riverina.
Nicola Cave is a constituent of mine, a young Wagga Wagga mother of 3, as she says, incredible children. She writes, "If you'd asked me 7 years ago whether I understood disability, I would have said yes. Of course I did. I spent my high school and uni years teaching children with autism, Down syndrome and physical disabilities to swim. I've been a nurse for 11 years and a midwife for 8. I've cared for people with all kinds of abilities, but I was wrong. I did not understand disability, not the way I do now, until I became the primary carer for my beautiful 6-year-old son, Hux, who has autism spectrum disorder level 2, child apraxia of speech, oral apraxia, sensory processing disorder and hypermobility." And she is concerned, as are so many people across the Riverina and the nation, about the changes to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. She told me that her son cannot get the therapy he needs in a group setting. He cannot get it under the Thriving Kids program, is what she said. He cannot get it from a generic therapist assigned by a government system. He needs a specialist. But she had this to say: changing his therapist because of parliamentary changes will be to his detriment. It will cause regression. It will cause distress. It will undo years of work. I need to say this clearly. The fraud and corruption that has occurred within the NDIS is real. It is devastating. It has robbed participants of funds they desperately need. But that fraud was committed by unscrupulous providers that successive governments allowed to register, operate and continue unchecked for years. Families like mine reported it, advocacy groups reported it, other providers have reported it. The systemic failures were known, the systemic failures were ignored by the government. And yet the response to that failure is to punish the participants. It is to restrict, gatekeep and dismantle the supports of the very people who had nothing to do with the corruption, the vulnerable, the children, the adults, the families who were navigating the system in good faith, working with the legitimate, ethical, highly trained providers to build capacity and access a life with dignity. Her statements, her heart-rending appeal is not isolated. She is not alone. She is like so many who turned up to a forum I conducted to hear the stories, to listen to these people from throughout Wagga Wagga and the region. And Nicola, I do feel for her because she genuinely, like every good mum and parent would, just wants the best for their child. And we know the NDIS needs a complete audit. We do know that. But the difficulty is with the recent changes in the budget, it is taking funds away from those children and others who so desperately need it, and it's simply wrong.
I thank the member, and I call the member for Bean.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. When Australian sport is showcased on the international stage, all Australians feel proud. But I think the best byproduct of international success is the inspiration it provides to people back at home to get involved in community sports. There are a few things as rewarding, both physically and mentally, as getting involved in sports. And while my days as a star athlete may be a little behind me, I always encourage those who are able to get involved in the sports that we all love. Unfortunately, Deputy Speaker, not everyone has that opportunity. There are a number of groups within our society that face unfair and unjust barriers in participation. This, I know in particular, is faced by girls and young women. The Albanese Labor government is committed to knocking these barriers down and has committed and delivered a number of programs that deliver just that. The Play Our Way grant is one example of this, with Scouts ACT in my electorate receiving $1.5 million to upgrade facilities at Camp Cottermouth to ensure safe and inclusive facilities are installed at this iconic location. Last year we committed to upgrades at the Chisholm Cricket Oval to deliver that as well. I want to take this moment to recognise the work of Woden Valley Soccer Club. This club is one of the largest clubs in Canberra, if not the largest, when measured by the number of registered players, and has the highest participation of girls in the game of the ACT. Jason Duria and Lydia Williams have close connections to the club, but unfathomably, this club has been prevented from seeking promotion to the ACT National Premier League girls competition and prevented from providing girls in their club a strong pathway into higher levels of participation in their sport. I encourage Capital Football to reconsider its decision regarding Woden Valley Soccer Club's participation in the National Premier League girls competition in 2027 so that everyone has equal opportunity. Deputy Speaker, I also want to take this moment to acknowledge the Alchemy Chorus, who recently celebrated their 10-year anniversary. The Alchemy Chorus is a dementia-friendly choir established by Brian Triglione and has been recognised for its deeply moving and joyous work, including being awarded the Chief Minister's Award for Inclusivity and a Positive Ageing Award from the ACT Council on the Ageing. They've also been instrumental in the establishment of 9 similar choirs across Australia. Deputy Speaker, it was fantastic to be able to join in their Decade of Delight and sing along with them, mostly in tune, to recognise their accomplishments. Alchemy brings joy and light to difficult journeys. To Brian and all the volunteers, thank you so much for your work.
I thank the member and I call the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As we head into Kind July, there's no better time to reflect on the quiet acts of kindness that strengthen our communities every day. I recently caught up with Christ's Mission Possible in my electorate, and as always, I left feeling inspired. Each week, Christ's Mission Possible feeds around 25,000 people, including preparing thousands of school lunches. Few things are more heartbreaking than imagining parents in our community staring at empty fridges. Yet it's becoming more common as families are squeezed by rising housing, childcare, grocery and school costs. The Salvo's latest Red Shield report found that 72% of people seeking assistance worried about where their child's next meal will come from. To support locals doing it tough, my office has been collecting donations for community care kits. Our boardroom is piled high with food and winter essentials because in Lindsay we do look after each other. You can see that same spirit in Penrith City Park each morning. Volunteers serving breakfast to those in need, among them familiar blue hoodies from my office, and my office enjoys that so much, that interaction with our local community. They're part of nearly 15,000 volunteers in Penrith City. This generous spirit was on show at our recent community care high tea as locals dug deep to support programs for the area's most vulnerable. Before entering Parliament, I worked in community housing in Penrith, and it taught me that real compassion is local, it's practical and it's personal. My staff spend hours helping constituents navigate systems that can feel overwhelming, fighting to ensure their voices are heard. They celebrate the wins, but they also carry the heartbreak. This week, one of my staff was left in tears after learning that an NDIS participant she'd been helping had attempted to take his own life while waiting for the support he desperately needs. It was a sombre reminder that behind every policy decision is a person, a life, depending on us to get it right. As we head into Kind July, it's worth remembering compassion is not softness. It is the strength to care, to listen, and to step forward when others need help. And to everyone in Lindsay who are helping out, there are so many of you, thank you so much for everything you do.
I thank the member and I call the member for Boothby.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Last weekend, Surf Life Saving SA hosted its annual Excellence Awards, and big congratulations to Brighton and Glenelg Surf Life Saving Clubs in my electorate of Boothby, who did our community proud. Congratulations to Bobby Tanner from the Brighton Surf Life Saving Club for winning Surf Life Saver of the Year. Bobby receives the award for his extensive leadership expertise and training and his outstanding service to club patrols and the Emergency Operations Group. And Bobby's to be doubly congratulated because he's recently achieved the milestone of 4,000 patrol hours, a testament to his service and commitment to our local community. I also congratulate Lachlan Larvin from the Glenelg Surf Life Saving Club for winning the John Baker Young Surf Life Saver of the Year. Lachlan is 19 years old and has contributed to the life and operations of Glenelg Club through leadership, mentoring and life saving. Congratulations also to Hannah Deacon from the Glenelg Surf Life Saving Club for winning Athlete of the Year. Hannah has participated in both state and national surf sport events, winning 5 gold medals at state championships in iron, board, swim, surf belt race and board rescue. And she's an invaluable member of the SA Reds, with whom she's competed nationally in Super Surf Teams League and the Interstate Championships. These two clubs also saw 2 of their members inducted into the Hall of Fame, Glenelg's Lee Bowbridge for sport and Brighton's Richard Crowe for leadership. Deputy Speaker, I'm lucky enough to have 4 surf life saving clubs in my electorate. As well as Glenelg and Brighton, I'd like to shout out to Somerton Surf Life Saving and Seacliff Surf Life Saving clubs. All 4 of these clubs and surf life saving across SA have had a really tough year with the algal bloom, but their commitment to ensuring our community remains safe never wavered. Federal and state government funded them to do additional patrols throughout summer and to be a point of factual information and advice to beachgoers. And I think it's important to remember that as well as being a local community sporting club, providing connection and belonging to its members, this is a volunteer-based emergency service. They train all year round to keep their skills up, and they volunteer their time to patrol our beaches in summer and keep our community safe. I also recognise all the volunteers behind the scenes, coaches, team managers, the board, management committee and much more. To ensure that this work can continue from strength to strength, the Albanese Labor government has pledged $500,000 to each of these 4 surf life saving clubs to improve their community and sporting infrastructure and facilities, because it's important that they have the best equipment and facilities to keep them safe while they are keeping the rest of us safe. Deputy Speaker, can I once again congratulate the winners, the Brighton and Glenelg Surf Life Saving Clubs, on their exceptional achievements, and their communities should be enormously proud. Thank you.
I thank the member and I call the member for Flinders.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, what kind of government says Australia faces the most challenging strategic environment since World War II, signs up to AUKUS, promises a larger and more capable Navy, and then starts selling off parts of Navy bases? That's exactly what is happening at HMAS Cerberus in my electorate. The Albanese government has identified 67 defence sites across Australia for disposal, and the list includes historic sites like the Victoria Barracks in Melbourne and the Victoria Barracks in Sydney. And now a huge part of HMAS Cerberus, the cradle of the Royal Australian Navy, is also on the chopping block. It's a world-leading training base which welcomes over 6,000 people each year, preparing future leaders for the AUKUS fleet. And over the past few weeks, I have heard from hundreds of local residents. 2 weeks ago, hundreds of them gathered together at a community information session run by Defence, and the message was loud and clear. The community does not agree that this land is surplus. Much of the land being sold is environmentally significant and virtually untouched. One former sailor who joined the Navy at just 17 years of age wrote to me, "I do not want to see this land sold off." And his sentiment and the determination that sits behind it has been repeated time and time again. People understand that once defence land is sold, it is virtually impossible to get it back. Many in my electorate with significant service to the nation in their past are asking a very reasonable question. If Australia expects HMAS Cerberus to play a bigger role in training sailors under AUKUS, why on earth are we reducing the land available to support its future growth? Others have raised concerns about the environmental significance of the site and the possibility of future development as it's part of the Ramsar designated region of Western Port. One resident wrote to me, "Please protect the beautiful wildlife and pristine coastline around Somers and Crib Point from development." The remarkable local underwater documentary maker, Cherie Maris, is currently producing an extraordinary work on the wondrous waters of Western Port. And just a few weeks ago, she discovered a unique glow-in-the-dark shark. If ever you needed proof for the uniqueness of this region, Cherie's discovery of the biofluorescence of the swell shark in the waters off Cerberus is it. I have written to both the Minister for Defence and the Minister for Finance a number of times outlining the concerns raised by locals and questioning whether this land has genuinely been assessed as surplus to future defence requirements. The people of Western Port have a deep connection to HMAS Cerberus. Generations of servicemen and women have trained there. It forms part of our local identity and part of Australia's naval story. And that is why I will keep fighting with my community to call off this hasty and ill-planned sell-off.
I thank the member and I call the member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today I'm honoured to recognise the 6 members of Bennelong who received King's Birthday Awards recently. Each in their own right, they've embodied key values of compassion, integrity and service to better our community and the world around us. I'd like to congratulate the following. Receiving a Companion of the Order of Australia, only one of 5 Australians to receive this year, was Professor William Rawlinson of Riverview. He received this incredible honour for his eminent service to the medical sciences as a virologist through clinical research, education and national and international public health. He played a crucial role in shaping Australia's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and is a critical asset to the Therapeutic Goods Administration Laboratory. His long-term work has involved reduction of the effects of cytomegalovirus infection for pregnant women, which is the 2nd most common cause of severe disease in Australian neonates. Congratulations, Professor Rawlinson, and thank you for your work. 2 Bennelong residents received an Officer of the Order of Australia this year. Professor Elizabeth Elliott of Hunters Hill was awarded for her distinguished service to the paediatric medicine, Indigenous children's health and women's health, Deputy Speaker. She is renowned for her work in preventing and diagnosing and treating fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, helping to develop the Australian national guidelines to minimise substance use during pregnancy. Professor Margaret Schnitzler of Hunters Hill received the award for her distinguished contributions to innovative surgical training, research and tertiary education. She has pioneered the field as Australia's first colorectal surgeon and served as the first female professor of surgery at the University of Sydney and co-deputy head of the Sydney Medical School. Bennelong had 2 recipients of the Medal of the Order of Australia this year, Deputy Speaker. Mr Roderick Cook of Lane Cove was recognised for his service to the community through a range of organisations. Sydney Community Services has seen Mr Cook excel as a board member since 2016, and since 2003 he's been the Vice President of the Lane Cove RSL sub-branch. Mr John Devine of Lane Cove was awarded for service to the Lane Cove community. In 2021, he was recognised as the Lane Cove Citizen of the Year for his outstanding and sustained contribution to community life. Over the years, he has also provided valuable services to residents who need it most, like working with the Delvina Women's Refuge to provide essential food and grocery items. Lastly, I'm honoured to recognise Mr Paul Ballard of Macquarie Park as a recipient of the Emergency Services Medal. His commitment to Marine Rescue New South Wales has continued over 21 years, where he currently holds the leadership role of Master and Unit Commander at Port Jackson. On behalf of Bennelong, Deputy Speaker, I thank all their recipients for their outstanding contributions as true assets to our community. I'm so honoured to be able to represent them here in this place.
I thank the member and I call the member for Wide Bay.
Thank you, Speaker. 2 of the Gympie region's hardest workers and biggest advocates, Mal Dodd and Sean Connolly, have been given microphones and a licence to inform and entertain. Together, they are the brains trust, and I use that term loosely, behind the Gympie Grapevine podcast, a one-stop shop for everything from upcoming events to the big important conversations on mental health, men's health and connecting people with the right support. It's like your local notice board therapist and town crier, just with better sound quality and much dodgier dad jokes. I had the pleasure of joining Sean and Mal on episode 15, and I can confirm between the local legends, sports clubs, community champions and the mighty Gympie Grippers Arm Wrestling Club, it's the most entertaining way to stay informed and about what's happening in the region. Mal is a relentless optimist, possibly powered entirely by community spirit, and he's built a 26,000 strong following celebrating Gympie at its past and present. And Sean, well, if there's an award for helping people, he's either won it, he's been nominated for it, or he's too busy volunteering and helping people to even notice about it. Mal and Sean are both passionate about helping others, and together they're the proof that the real treasure of Gympie is definitely its town people and occasionally their podcast. Deputy Speaker, Sharon and I had the pleasure of attending the Mergen show last weekend. Unfortunately, this show had to be postponed from its original date in March due to heavy rain and flooding. But despite those challenges, the event was a tremendous success, showcasing the resilience and spirit of Mergen and surrounding communities. The show featured a wide range of agricultural displays and entertainment, and together with the Mergen Radio, people celebrated local industry and tradition. One of the biggest challenges facing shows societies today is a lack of volunteers. That's why it's so encouraging to see the people, young people, stepping up in the Gympie show, in the Mergen Show Society. Particularly Josh Steinhardt, the 2026 Show Society President, continues to set a remarkable example. Having taken on the role at just 19 years old, Josh's dedication to agriculture and community service reflects the very heart of what these shows represent. I also congratulate Mergen showgirl Steph Simpson, the Rural Show Ambassador Matt McCauley, who were selected as the South Burnett Sub-Chamber regional winners. They are both exceptional representatives of Mergen and the wider region, and I wish them every success at the ECA later this year.
I thank the member and I call the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Well, when considering the Ballarat electorate, you might think of the City of Ballarat itself, with its Gold Rush buildings, its gardens, our lakes, Sovereign Hill, and many proud local manufacturers like McCain's or Mars or Hames Paints, or our cafes and restaurants that will soon be battling it out again for the annual Ballarat Best Pie competition. But my electorate is also made up of many surrounding small villages with varied and distinct identities. To the south of the city itself, around 270 people live in a beautiful town called Navigators. The community is nestled between two ancient volcanoes, Mount Buninyong and Mount Warrenheip. A year ago, the community officially opened their brand new hub, which the Albanese government was proud to support with $200,000. And it is now a very well-used community asset. It's home to a men's social group, as well as craft, history and table tennis groups, and it hosts local Pilates classes as well. Spread throughout the space are documents and photos celebrating the history of Navigators and its people. When I was there recently, I was treated to a beautiful morning tea spread and some great conversation. As one local said, in their community, you can't just say hello over the back fence when your neighbours are scattered as far as they are in Navigators, so you find a place to come together and connect. And the community have very much created that space, and it is absolutely thriving. 8 kilometres away to the west of Ballarat is Cardigan Village. It's a little bigger with the Navigators, with around 350 households, and I was there last week to celebrate beloved local postie Lynn McKnight, who has been delivering the mail for 27 years. Lynn is known by all of the local residents and their children, and also all of the loved local cats and dogs who go out of their way to get a pat from Lynn when she's delivering. She's one of those people who makes people's days just a little bit better with a smile and a kind word. In 2019, Lynn's contract was awarded to someone else, and the Cardigan Village community rallied until the decision was overturned by Australia Post. The community feel that she is simply quite irreplaceable. In both these proud little communities, locals are committing to making the world around them a better place for them, their children and grandchildren. It's all too easy in the life that we live to get caught up in the negativity and abuse on social media. It's perpetuated by a minority of people, but they are very, very loud. It is incredibly refreshing when we all go home to our communities, and when I go home to mine, to be reminded that the vast majority of people are thoughtful and respectful. They are living their day-to-day lives with kindness and generosity.
they're checking in on their neighbours, they're supporting each other, and they're stepping up to make their communities better, and I'm very grateful to them for that.
I thank the Minister and I call the member for Groom.
Thank you, Speaker. On the 8th of this month, I received an email from Nicole Carlisle. This was after the budget, and she wanted to reach out to me and share with me her concerns. Look, she's a small business owner in Toowoomba, owns Freedom Lifestyle and Fitness just down the road from my office. And the tax changes that she'd seen come through caused her to write in. She has 3 employees in her team of 10 who own their home already. But amongst the other 7, Speaker, she was really concerned following conversations with them about what their hopes and dreams were for the future and what this budget did for them. And so, look, she wrote to me, and I guess I thought it was important to go and to hear her concerns. So 2 days later, I was down in her office meeting with her team, and we had most of that 7 in the room. And look, I asked them, you know, how politically engaged are you? Because it's interesting to see that group from about 24 to 27, how switched on they are. And they all said the same thing. They've never been switched on to politics before, but this budget drew them in. And they were genuinely concerned what the impacts would be. They'd seen a lot on social media. They'd seen all the memes go through from other small businesses in the area, in Toowoomba, raising their concerns. This incredibly coordinated fear campaign Labor dreamed up was happening with small businesses in my region, saying, we're really worried about where this is going. So I went out to see them. And I spoke to these kids. And the number one message I got back from them is that they were concerned that what was laid out in their future, they could not see the pathway to prosperity that had been laid out for future generations, the way that they could have the same things that future generations had. They didn't want to take it away from those who'd got there. They wanted their own pathway, and they wanted a future laid out for them. And they made that very clear. The other thing that they said that really struck home, they just wanted there to be some structural advantage to being an Australian. Some inbuilt way that got us ahead because of the hard work we did. They wanted structural advantage for trying hard. And they felt that was being removed from them, from working and saving their money. They wanted some structural advantage for that. And goodness me, when we got to the heart of it, why this stuff mattered. For some of them it was starting businesses, but for all of them it was starting families. And how this impacted their chances of having the same happiness, not just the prosperity, but the happiness that future generations had had. And Speaker, I was encouraged, as I always am when talking to the younger generation. I'm incredibly optimistic. They see the dangers of just wallowing in protest. They want to get involved. So my message to them was very clear. Get involved in politics. The same thing I say to all kids who reach out and talk to us. Get involved. Don't protest. It's fun. It feels good. You can vent your anger. But get involved. Join a party. Whatever side you feel inclined to. Get involved in politics and make a difference.
I thank the member and I call the member for Barton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Now, I rise to speak about my recent visit to Sydney Technology High School with the member for Hunter, Dan Rapicoli, who is also our Special Envoy for Men's Health. And we met with school teachers to talk about men's health, mental health and the pressures that young men are facing every day. And we know men are less likely than women to seek help when they are struggling. Too often boys are taught that being a man means staying in control, toughing it out and never actually looking weak. And that pressure is not new, but it is being very much supercharged by what we see online. And today a boy can go out online looking for something as harmless as wrestling or fitness tips, and before you know it, he's being pulled into content about being jacked, the looks maxing and chasing a narrow idea of what it means to be a man, Deputy Speaker. And a lot of it chips away at self-esteem and tells boys they are never strong enough, big enough, or even good enough. And at Sydney Tech, we heard directly from students about what they are seeing online and hearing from friends. And we need to listen to young men, take them very seriously, and help them push back against these harmful messages. And the message was very simple. It is not weak to speak. Also, Deputy Speaker, one of the most important things I've done since being elected as the new local member for Barton is actually establishing the Barton Defence Community Council. And it gives my electorate, the local defence community, a direct line to their federal representative, and it makes sure that we work the work that I do here in Canberra is shaped by the lived experience of people in the St George and Canterbury area. And recently that council hosted a panel at Bexley Golf Club with local ex-service people, serving personnel and families, and speaking very honestly about military life, transition, mental health and well-being. And what we heard was very clear. You know, too many current and former ADF personnel still face real barriers to seeking support. Stigma, defence culture, and the fear of being not as fit for service can really stop people from asking help. And veterans also spoke about the stress of DVA claims, the difficulty they find navigating the system, and the need for clear local referral pathways. So I want to thank the member for Hunter and our Special Envoy for Men's Mental Health, Dan Rapopoli, and Sergeant Kirsty Claymore for actually helping a very safe space where those conversations can be had. And that is why this council is crucial, because support must be local, it must be inclusive, practical and shaped by veterans themselves.
I thank the member and I call the member for Fairfax.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Too many businesses on the Sunshine Coast are closing. Now, a local business is far more than just a business. It is the sponsor of local footy clubs. They're the ones who pay the salaries to local employees. They're the ones who do the hard work. And behind all the shop fronts that we might see across the Sunshine Coast lies a personal story. It's often the story of an entrepreneur who had an idea. It's the story of somebody who put their own money at risk to back themselves. It's the story often of a family who are trying to pay their own way, get their kids through school so that they can ensure their kids have a future. The story of local business is very much a personal one. Every single morning, there are people right across the Sunshine Coast who are fretting because they don't know if their businesses can survive. They lie awake at night not knowing if they can make payroll. They do not know if their employees will have enough money to put food on the table for their own families. And this is symptomatic of a decline of our national economy, felt on the ground at home in my communities. And then in comes the Labor Party's last budget, a budget presented at a time of a cost of living crisis where we had the highest level of insolvencies ever seen in this country. And it is a budget that penalises small business. Is it any wonder that we are seeing local businesses close their doors? In my own suburb, you walk down that strip in Buderim and you see businesses closing. You hear, I've heard the last 2 weeks of 3 more businesses with shop fronts, all going to close. This is what is happening to local communities right across this country, and this government is showing absolute disregard for small business. It's why on the 8th of July, I will host a Understanding the Budget Forum. So local businesses on the Sunshine Coast, in my area of Fairfax, can understand what this Labor Party is doing to them. And it'll be held at the Ten Toes Brewery. To shift to a different topic, if I can, Deputy Speaker, to the Sunshine Coast athletes who are heading to the Commonwealth Games, can I assure you, you do not go into that stadium alone. You have a community that's absolutely backing you. Those athletes have done it tough. They've worked every single morning, getting out of bed when everyone else was sleeping. They avoided the parties so that they could get fit for the Games. And I want to tell you, we are already proud of you. Wear the green and gold with pride and know the Sunny Coast community is absolutely behind you.
Thank the member, and I call the member for Werriwa.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Recently, I hosted Jacob and Boomy, 2 Year 10 students of St Francis Catholic College in Edmondson Park.
It's a quorum's been called. Yeah, we're able to, the member for Werriwa is able to continue providing we have quorum here. Okay. Well, the Federation Chamber will then stand adjourned. Suspended.
Chris, I don't pause it for a quorum, do I?
Mandated suspended due to loss of quorum.
Yeah.
The Federation Chamber is resumed and the member for Werriwa in continuation.
Can I ask that the clock be reset, because I was only 5 words in and I've lost almost a minute.
Did you stop when I left? Okay, do you want to turn it back then? Okay, the clock's been reset for the member for Werriwa.
I appreciate that, Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much. Recently, I hosted Jacob and Boomy, 2 Year 10 students in St Francis Catholic College in Edmondson Park for work experience in the Werriwa electorate office. They were both impressive and thoughtful young leaders. Jacob prepared the following speech regarding the announcement of the first passenger flights from Western Sydney International Airport. Jacob's first speech, Nancy Bird Walton was regarded as a remarkable aviator, pioneering the contributions of wisdom destined for the skies since her first flight in 1933. Trained by Charles Kingston Smith, Nancy Bird Walton was the youngest licensed female pilot in our Commonwealth. On Wednesday, the 10th of June, I was given the pleasure of attending the official announcement declaring the beginning of operations for Western Sydney Airport, named after Miss Walton. Just like Nancy Bird, the Western Sydney Airport shatters records as Australia's first new major airport in over 50 years and will be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The new airport supports my electorate by promising 28,000 job opportunities over the next 5 years. That goes without mentioning the 200,000 new careers for the younger generations in the Western Sydney parklands. The Albanese Labor government has produced not just an airport, but delivered long-standing infrastructure upgrades that will benefit Greater Western Sydney region for generations to come. And for me, it's been a privilege to watch the airport come out of the ground, from rolling cow paddocks to the impressive 21st century facilities, boasting sandstone from Carryong and facilities which mirror the colours of Australia. Deputy Speaker, Jason also prepared a speech relating to the work of St Vincent de Paul. Sometimes all we need is a helping hand. At the heart of Australia lies our spirit of service. Since 1854, the St Vincent de Paul Society has worked tirelessly in Australia and my electorate to provide relief to people in need. Carrying the spirit of Australia, I've seen their service in Liverpool, providing people in immediate crisis with food, clothing and a friendly face. St Vinny's has earned the unwavering trust of our community. I'm also glad to acknowledge Mr Matthew McMahon, Principal and his staff and students of St Francis Catholic College in Edmondson Park, whose partnership with St Vincent's keeps our spirit of service as Australians alive and well. Both Vinnie's and St Francis serve our community with an open mind and heart, continuing a long-standing legacy of service as one country. Thank you so much to Jacob and Boomy for coming to my office. It was a pleasure to meet with you.
Thank you, Member for Werriwa. And I give the call to the member for Fadden.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, parents and grandparents deserve an aged care system that treats them with dignity, compassion and humanity. Older Australians should not be denied care that they so desperately need just because a computer algorithm says no. The case of 98-year-old Holywell local Mr Dudley Austin highlights huge flaws in the government's new aged care laws. After suffering a life-threatening fall, Dudley was assessed as a low priority for care, despite serious concerns about his condition. For Dudley's family, what should have been precious final weeks together became a battle with the system. It wouldn't listen, and that system was failing them in trying to get the help he deserved. Dudley sadly passed away on the 10th of June. My thoughts are with Amanda, Andrew and his family during this difficult time. Dudley deserved better, his family deserved better, and older Australians deserve better. No family wants to hear that their loved one's needs have been reduced to a score on a screen, but that's exactly what's happening under Labor's version of RoboCare. We are hearing concerns from families, providers, advocates and aged care experts right across the country. The Coalition has repeatedly raised these issues, but the government refuses to listen. The Labor government must act to restore humanity to aged care assessments. Australian seniors deserve nothing less. Deputy Speaker, our veterans didn't put a cap on their service to Australia, but Labor is putting a cap on their care. In May last year, I wrote to Minister for Veterans Affairs on behalf of a local veteran, and the response arrived in June 2026, more than a year later. Now, if a veteran has to wait for over a year for an answer, something is seriously wrong. And now Labor is capping veterans' allied healthcare at $5,000 a year. Physiotherapy, psychology and occupational therapy that many of our veterans depend on. I receive emails every day from veterans and their families worried about what this means for them. People like Paul from Oxenford, who wrote to tell me he is a concerned veteran worried about his future. Tracy from Bigger Waters, who said many vets fall through the cracks. Their pleas are left unanswered. Stephen from Ormo, who after 46 years of service told me, I am saddened with how the system treats us older soldiers. Robin from Bigger Waters, who is still struggling and has outstanding claims stuck in the DVA process. And Russell from Pimpamar, after 49 years of service, says his government's treatment of veterans is a disgrace. Just like the member for McEwen, Deputy Speaker, who should show our veterans more respect in this place. He is absolutely out of line in not listening to these stories. The Minister and these members opposite, who should know better, deserve to treat our veterans with respect.
Members' time has expired. Can we all just take the temperature down in here, please? I call the member for McEwen.
He's out the door. The member might want to remember it was his government that refused to pay veterans for 3 years. It was his government that said there was no value in supporting veterans.
Member for McFadden.
So you're a moron.
Member for Fadden.
Back into your cave. Deputy Speaker, I rise today to stand with the Doreen RSL and veterans that I represent. Men and women who have supported and served this country deserve not just gratitude, but respect and support. For over a decade, during Liberal National Coalition governments, Doreen RSL has been seeking a permanent home. A $1.6 million federal investment was secured in good faith to deliver exactly that at Brookwood Community Centre. To ensure our growing veteran community in Doreen and Mernda were able to access supports from a chat to veterans or accessing advocacy, mental health support or complex needs. But sadly, 12 months on, after this was secured, the City of Whittlesea has acted in bad faith, disingenuous about the accommodation for the RSL as planned. In a blatant mix of unfair, impossible hurdles and a financial penalty that is ridiculous by any means, including stripping away the very revenue streams, food, beverages and community engagement activities that keep RSLs alive. The City of Whittlesea is setting RSL up to fail. The deliberate misleading by Council, who misled the community on the wants of the RSL. First, the financials. Council says the entire building is expected to raise $57,000 a year in rent, but they want the RSL to pay $44,000 for less than half the building. Work that out, seriously. Council imposed time limits on opening hours for the RSL. 8 p.m, ladies and lads, get out, time to go home. Yet you, the member for Solomon, can get 130 of our friends and have a party with drinking, music, all that, right through to 11 o'clock. Why is the RSL being treated so bad? It's imposing no alcohol, no food, no beverages policy on the RSL. I mean, what a joke. How is the RSL to raise funds if it's not allowed to even take cost recovery? Strangest is the imposition and the banning of sports on the TVs at the RSL. Council itself notes Doreen RSL has indicated gaming machines are not proposed. However, even without gaming or wagering facilities, having a sports bar type configuration would shift the facility's character towards hospitality-focused model, which is not in line with the intended purposes of community centres. That is a deliberate falsehood by the Council. It's shameful and ratepayers are disgusted. What troubles ratepayers even worse is the perennial preferential treatment afforded to a private, for-profit dance school operator. It is run by a former employee of the council, the same council that we were given this funding. Sincerely hope the relationship has nothing to do with the City of Whittlesea's preferential treatment for a former employee on this. Then the co-owner said in the Northern Star Weekly, how can you have a group of mostly male veterans in one room and young girls in the other? I am speechless. Our veterans deserve better than this vile insinuation. They deserve respect, transparency and a council willing to stand with them and deliver as agreed.
A vulnerable young person from Kooyong today. His needs are being disregarded and disrespected by the NDIS. Peter is 13. He has level 3 autism and anxiety disorder and expressive language delay. He's been dependent on NDIS support since it was established. Late last year, Peter lost his dad and his mental health deteriorated. His family was told to get a plan review, including a functional capacity assessment, and that cost them almost $1,000. But the review resulted in cuts to his psychology supports, despite a clear, documented increase in his functional needs. Peter's mum has requested an internal review. My team has advocated on his behalf. But again, the NDIS upheld a 64% reduction in his plan. Less speech therapy, less psychology, less social skill supports. The review actually accepted evidence from his treating team. It accepted that Peter had made meaningful progress in the face of therapy, but it cut his supports nonetheless. Peter's mum knows, as so many carers around Australia know, that things are about to get worse for disabled people under the NDIS. Under the government's proposed cuts to the NDIS, which are currently in front of this Parliament, pathways for participants to challenge unfair decisions like this are going to become much narrower. Having an inadequate plan under the NDIS will no longer be grounds to request a reassessment. And plan design is increasingly going to be in the hands of automated assessment tools. If the computer says no, the government will say no, and you will have no right of repeal. We've seen how poorly this has worked for vulnerable people under the aged care, but the government is proposing to rule out the same unfair system for the NDIS. The government is also going to be able to deny vulnerable people NDIS supports if they haven't received all the medical therapies available for their treatments. You might be on a waiting list for those treatments, sometimes for years at a time, but that would be grounds to deny access to care under the NDIS. That is a cruel paradox. Deputy Speaker, Peter's just one young person from Kooyong, but he's much loved and his community wants better for him. They want a government which cares for vulnerable people and helps them achieve their best, not one that makes it harder for young people and families who are doing it tough at a tough time.
Thank you. In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded. I call the clerk.
Government business. Further statements on the Women's Budget Statement.
Are there any statements? The member for Bullwinkle.
Thank you, Speaker. Today I rise to speak in support of the Women's Budget Statement and, importantly, to speak about what this budget means in the real lives of Australian women, in the home, in the workplace, in the doctor's waiting room and in the safety of their own homes. Labor introduced the world's first women's budget statement back in the 1980s, and in 2022 the Albanese Labor government brought it back. And we did that because budgets are not gender neutral and neither is the economy. This statement shines a light on how budget decisions land differently for women and girls, and it embeds a simple discipline into the government whereby every budget proposal is tested for its impact on women as part of the process. That is gender-responsive budgeting, and it ensures that gender equality sits at the core of our economic agenda. This year's Women's Budget Statement shows a budget that is delivering for women in 3 practical ways: helping women keep more of what they earn, making systems safer and fairer, especially after separation, and strengthening the services that women rely on, from Medicare to housing in crisis. So let's talk through that. First, cost of living relief and fairness in the tax system. From July 1st this year, every Australian taxpayer gets more tax cuts. The already legislated changes reduce the 16% marginal rate to 15% as of 1st of July this year and to 14% the following year. Alongside that, this budget introduces a new $1,000 instant tax deduction for work-related expenses. from the 2026-27 income year, making it simpler for millions of people to claim what they're entitled to without chasing receipts for every small expense. And from 2027-28 income year, it adds a permanent working Australian tax offset of up to $250 for income that's earned from work. Taken together, these measures mean the average worker will be better off by around $3,000 over the forward years. And for many women in Bullwinkle, of my electorate and across the country, that is money that goes straight to the rent, the mortgage, to school costs and groceries. It is relief that backs women's participation in the workforce. And we can see the progress that we've made since 2022 when you put women at the centre of economic policy. Women's average weekly earnings have grown by almost $300 a week. More than 1 million families have benefited from cheaper childcare, and Australia has recorded its highest ever international ranking for gender equality, 13th this year, and that's up from 43rd when we came to government. So 43rd when we came to government and now 13th. We're making progress. And women have saved more than $647 million across almost 139 million prescriptions, including through expanded access to contraceptives and menopausal therapies. Secondly, safety and fairness for women, including safety in our systems. This budget invests almost $183 million over 4 years to make the child support system safer and more effective. Right now, around $2 billion in child support debt is unpaid, and women make up around 83% of the recipients. The average debt is nearly $8,700, and for many families, $8,700 could be used for braces for children, for sporting clubs fees, for school excursions, or the chance for a child to learn a musical instrument. That's astounding, $2 billion of debt, mainly owed to women. We know that the scheme can be weaponised after separation and used as a tool of coercion and control, and these reforms will crack down on financial abuse, strengthen assessment and compliance, and ensure more children and families receive the support that they are owed. They are the most significant changes to the child support system in nearly 20 years, and they send a clear message: the Commonwealth will not allow systems to be exploited to extend harm. Thirdly, housing security for women and girls in crisis. Everyone should have a safe place to call home, especially women and children experiencing domestic and family violence. This budget invests $59.4 million over 4 years for community housing providers supporting young people at risk or of experiencing homelessness. Girls and young women make up around 66% of that number of homelessness service users, and far too many young people who are homeless or at risk have been affected by gender-based violence as the reason that they had to leave home. And this budget continues a record investment in women's health as well. For too long, women's health has not been taken seriously enough, and when women's health is neglected, families and communities pay the price. Millions of women have already accessed cheaper medicines and better care through the Albanese Labor government's landmark Women's Health Package, including new access to contraception and menopause treatments on the PBS system. This budget adds a further $2 billion to strengthen Medicare, making it easier and cheaper for women to see a GP to get the care that they need. It also invests $2.7 million to make it easier for women to access and afford long-acting reversible contraceptives like IUDs and implants. Despite their efficacy, uptake in Australia has been comparatively low, and often this has been because of the cost and access barriers. This investment will help remove those barriers, including particularly women in regional and rural areas. In my electorate of Bullwinkle, Speaker, I meet women who are working hard, caring for their families, studying, running small businesses, volunteering in our community. But they tell me the same thing, that the cost of living has tightened, that services can be hard to reach, and that too often the systems that should support families can add stress instead. This budget responds to those realities with practical help and structural reform. As the first majority women federal government that we're a part of, we are determined to keep delivering better outcomes for women and girls, not just as an add-on, not as a footnote, but as a core test of whether our economic plan is working. Because when women have more financial security, when children receive the support that they are owed, when healthcare is accessible, and when safety is strengthened, the whole country benefits. This is what the Women's Budget Statement is: to make visible what too often goes unseen and to hold ourselves accountable for the progress. This budget helps women keep more of what they earn, builds safer and fairer systems, and invests in the services that matter. And I commend the Women's Budget Statement to the House. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Swan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I represent one of the most diverse communities in Western Australia. There are parts that have river views of the Swan, and then there are houses that look over industrial complexes. There are people that have had grandparents live there since the early 1900s, and people who have lived recently in Western Australia. What's fascinating is that when I hear stories from women in my community and the issues that affect their safety, their health and their financial security, what's fascinating is that it actually doesn't matter where they came from, what school they went to, whether they have children or not, or what tax bracket they're in. What I would say is that violence against women does not discriminate. What we also see is that there's discrimination at work, there continues to be unpaid care responsibilities. We've also seen the weaponisation of child support systems, and these issues do not sort themselves into background or identity. They reach women from every community and every culture. We have historically seen these issues be ignored and pushed to the side or treated as too complicated to fix. And you know what? This Women's Budget Statement exists to change that. It's an accountability mechanism that encourages us to consider how policy will affect women's lives, because budget decisions are not gender neutral. On paper, a policy can appear effective, but this mechanism pushes us to dig deeper and look for the silences in our society and the omissions within our policy that have real and lasting consequences. Bringing diverse perspectives to the table to make more effective policy is not a new idea. The Hawke Labor government introduced the Women's Budget Statement in 1984. When the Liberal government scrapped it, these issues took a back seat. And today, for the first time in our history, 56% of the Labor caucus are women. That does not happen overnight. It is the result of hard, continued advocacy to have different voices at the table, to challenge norms and to ensure that people making decisions reflect the lives of people and those decisions affect. And this year, one of the issues the Women's Budget Statement brings into focus is financial abuse, particularly through the child support system. This did not make the front page the day after the budget. It's not a salacious story, and it does not lend itself to a simple headline. But that is the exact point. The Women's Budget Statement exists to make us talk about the hard issues, the ones that get quietly filed away, the ones that do not trend but do devastate. And I'm proud to be a part of a government that takes that seriously, because financial abuse is not a niche issue and it does not discriminate. I served on the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Corporations and Financial Services Inquiry, which looked into financial abuse. The thing that was fascinating about this inquiry is that we went in knowing that financial systems are weaponised to abuse people particularly women. And what I was anticipating was looking at the systems associated with banks, credit lenders and superannuation. What I did not recognise is how government systems can be used and weaponised to hurt the people that they are meant to protect. And that's what we saw in the child support system. Specifically, former partners weaponising the child support system to harass and control, income being deliberately hidden to reduce payments owed to children, and coerced directorships, leaving women liable for debts that they never incurred. Women who had left violent relationships, finding that the abuse continued through paperwork, through courts, through systems that they believed would protect them. The Albanese government is investing $182 million to strengthen the child support system to ensure that we stop seeing it being weaponised against children. And this is thanks to the great work of the Social Services Minister. Right now, there is $2 billion in outstanding child support debt in the country. Women make up 83% of the recipients. The average debt per person is owed nearly $9,000. This is money that should be spent on groceries, school fees, uniforms. It's money that's supposed to be spent to help raise a child in a supported and safe environment. And the thing that I will say is that parents that don't pay their fair share of child support are simply scumbags. It is unacceptable. But we have introduced reforms, and these reforms will make it easier for parents to move from private collection to agency collection, where there will be increased protections. This will give Services Australia the power to stop vexatious and harassing behaviour. They will crack down on those who minimise income to reduce what they owe. It will strengthen protections for over 470,000 women and 1 million children receiving child support. These are the most significant changes to the child support system in nearly 20 years. These reforms are a significant step, but we know that the work does not stop here. I want to share a story about a constituent of mine in Swan. She's a mother of 2. She cares for them for more than 300 days a year. Her former partner deliberately reduced his working hours to minimise his child support payments. He claims the minimum threshold of overnight stays, but picks up the children late and drops them off early, not actually caring for them during the daytime hours where most of the care is required and when most of the costs occur. He doesn't pay school fees, he doesn't pay for extracurricular activities, and he continues to use the court system to intimidate and coerce. He hacked into her social media accounts, and through all of this, she's holding down a job and raising her children in a loving environment, but not with the supports that it required. She stated that she knows that her story is not unique and highlighted that this form of abuse is not siloed and it interacts with your ability to manage a household, a career, and live a normal life. This is financial abuse. It is deliberate, it is calculated, and it is harming children. I personally want to thank my constituent for taking the time to share her office so that these systematic issues can be highlighted so we can continue to work on fixing the root causes. We need to keep paying attention and keep improving on our systems, and we need to keep on asking whether the protections we've built are reaching the women and children who need them most. Properly valuing care work and removing structural barriers for women to participate in the labour force are the key to closing the gender pay gap and fostering a more productive economy. From the 1st of July, paid parental leave scheme will reach 6 months of leave for parents. Beyond the expansion, this government is also investing in the sharing care arrangements to send the message that caring for children should not be burdened solely resting on the shoulder of women. We are seeing this positive shift in society, and I have to say that modern dads, and many of them in this house and in this chamber right now, are being way more hands-on with their children, and with the early stages having that really important time to bond with their babies sets up children for life. And so thanks to the modern day dads that are actively involved in their children's lives. In 2025, men were 33% of new paid parental leave recipients. Isn't that amazing? It's interesting, when I had my first child and I ended up having an emergency caesarean, and I was very lucky that my husband had the ability to take time off work and support me at home. And I have to say that my husband is a very hands-on father, and I'm sure that there's a few dads that have had baby spew on their shoulders from burping their children here. But I have to say that we want to see more dads that are helping raise their children, and that's something that will help women but also help children as well. And we want to see men and women share these care responsibilities more effectively, because this is one of the things that will continue to break down the gender gaps that we see in our society. And this is a government that is genuinely committed to achieving equality for women.
Yeah. Thank you. The member for Hunter.
I move the Fed chamber do now adjourn.
Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second.
All in favour, say aye. Sorry. Oh, just... Sorry. But don't I do this? Oh, sorry. The member for McKellar.
Thank you, Assistant Speaker. Right now, we are at a critical crossroads for Australia's creative arts industry, one that may deeply harm this invaluable sector. At the recent AI Summit in Sydney, the chair of the Tech Council of Australia, Scott Farquhar, called for copyright reform to encourage AI investment. He claimed it is impossible to train an AI model in Australia while doing deals with rights holders. However, in response, the Australian Recording Industry Association rightly described that claim as nonsense. Around the world, AI companies are already striking licensing agreements with record labels, publishers and creators. The message from Australia's creative sector is absolutely clear. Tech companies do not need a special carve-out from the Copyright Act. They need a licence. Music, film, publishing and broadcasting already operate on licences used for content at scale. The Copyright Act provides a clear and workable framework. Copyright is not the enemy of innovation. It is what allows creators to earn a living from their talent and their work. Yet we now hear reports that the federal government is considering a cabinet proposal to introduce a text and data mining exception into Australia's copyright laws. Such an exception would allow AI companies to train on copyrighted works without asking permission from the artist, the writer, musician, filmmaker, journalist, performer, broadcaster, publisher or rights holder. The Australian creative and media industries do not support any weakening of copyright law. Weakening copyright would risk cutting Australian creators out of the global AI market altogether. This proposal is also reportedly linked to discussions with major AI tech firms about data centre investment in Australia. Deputy Speaker, investment must never come at the cost of Australian rights. The Albanese government must not sell out Australians to big tech. In October 2025, the government ruled out a text and data mining exception, and it must stick to its word. Backtracking now would amount to legalising the wholesale scraping of creative content, not just Australian content, but global content. Many would rightly call that theft. We're also hearing about a proposed creator fund. It's absolutely clear the Australian creative sector will not support a fund in exchange for their rights. Such a fund would strip creators of the ability to decide how their work is used and remove their capacity to negotiate its value.
It would extinguish the worth of Australian content, including our media, our broadcast rights and First Nations cultural expression, with the stroke of a pen. This is not a fair compromise. It is a concept designed by big tech to make the mass use of content legal without consent. Deputy Speaker, the stakes are extremely high. Australia's creative industries contribute more than $60 billion to our economy and employ hundreds of thousands of people. But even more vitally, the creative industries generate a genuine expression of our culture and what it means to be Australian. At the same time, our AI sector is growing strongly under existing copyright settings. We do not need to choose between innovation and integrity. We can have both. So I call on the government to guarantee 3 principles. First, consent. Creators must have the right to decide if their work is used. Second, credit. Their contribution must be acknowledged. And third, compensation. If AI companies profit, creators must be paid. We also need transparency, enforceable safeguards and strong protections for First Nations cultural and intellectual property. Australian creators are not asking for special treatment, they are asking for fairness. AI must be built on respect for the people whose creativity makes it possible. Thank you.
Thank you. The member for Richmond.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise today to speak in support of the establishment of the Parliamentary Friends of Crime Stoppers. Earlier this week, I joined my fellow co-chairs, the member for Cowper and the member for Fowler, at the launch of this new Parliamentary Friends group. I'd like to acknowledge my co-chairs for their commitment to this really important bipartisan initiative. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Mr Ian Stewart AO APM, Chair of Crime Stoppers Australia, along with the Crime Stoppers representatives from across the country who joined us at the launch. The creation of this new Parliamentary Friends Group represents a really important milestone in strengthening the partnership between Parliament, law enforcement agencies and the Australian community in our shared pursuit of safer communities. Community safety is something that's been very important to me throughout my entire career. Before entering Parliament, I served as a frontline police officer, and during that time, I saw firsthand how vital information from the public can be in helping police investigate crime, prevent harm and protect our communities. Time and time again, I witnessed investigations progress because an ordinary member of the public chose to come forward with information. Sometimes it was a seemingly small detail. Sometimes it was information that helped identify an offender, locate a missing person, recover stolen property or prevent further harm from occurring. Those experiences reinforced a simple truth. Community safety is strongest when communities and law enforcement work together. And one of the most effective tools we have in supporting law enforcement is community engagement. As Crime Stoppers Australia Chair Ian Stewart highlighted at the launch event, Crime Stoppers was built on the fundamental principle of empowering people to safely and anonymously share information that helps protect their local communities, families and friends. And today, Crime Stoppers has become one of Australia's most recognised and trusted community safety organisations. It serves as a unique bridge between the public and law enforcement, enabling information to reach the right authorities whilst protecting the anonymity of those who choose to come forward. And of course, the establishment of the Parliamentary Friends of Crime Stoppers provides an important opportunity for members and senators from across the political spectrum to strengthen awareness of community safety issues and better understand the important role that Crime Stoppers plays in helping police solve, prevent and disrupt crime across the nation. Community safety is not a partisan issue. It's something that affects every Australian. And the bipartisan nature of this Parliamentary Friends Group reflects a shared commitment to safer communities and stronger partnerships between the public, law enforcement agencies and government. At a time when criminal activity continues to evolve from organised crime to cyber-related offences and scams, fostering stronger cooperation between communities and law enforcement has never been more important. The true value that Crime Stoppers delivers is absolutely significant. Its recently released Independent Economic and Social Impact report found that Crime Stoppers generates more than $216 million in value for Australia each year and returns more than $11 for every dollar invested. Now, that value is not theoretical. It reflects real-world outcomes that reduce harm, improve public safety and reduce pressure on policing, justice and community services. Perhaps even more importantly, the report found that almost almost 45,000 reports would not have been made without Crime Stoppers. That represents thousands of pieces of information that may otherwise just would not have reached authorities. The report also identified more than $131 million in avoided harm associated with illicit drugs, more than $50 million in avoided costs linked to reoffending, and more than $32 million in law enforcement efficiency gains. These are substantial benefits for governments, communities and taxpayers alike. They represent fewer victims of crime, fewer repeat offenders and safer neighbourhoods across our country. Significantly, the report found that Crime Stoppers contributes to almost 3,000 arrests nationally and supports the seizure of approximately $30 million worth of illicit drugs. Behind each of these outcomes is information provided by a member of the public who chose to act. And behind every statistic is a person who saw something, heard something or knew something and decided to do something about it. That decision can help prevent harm, protect a victim, disrupt criminal activity or support an investigation. I look forward to working constructively with colleagues from right across the Parliament alongside Crime Stoppers Australia and our law enforcement partners to support informed discussion on emerging crime trends, community safety challenges and the role that every Australian can play in making our communities safer. And of course, Deputy Speaker, the number for Crime Stoppers, 1800 333 000, or you can of course go online and if it's an emergency, always just call 000. I want to thank Crime Stoppers for their ongoing work and dedication, and I encourage all Australians to continue supporting this important organisation and its mission of creating safer communities through partnership, trust and community action.
Thank you. The member for Maranoa.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise to update the House on the unfolding insurance crisis in Western Queensland. Just to recap, back in 2011-12, St George, Charleville, Roma had huge floods, inundated our communities. There was no protection, there was no levy banks, and effectively the insurance companies, rightfully in their defence, lifted insurance premiums by 90, 100, 120%. Until such time as levy banks were built to protect those communities. Fast forward to 2015, those levy banks were completed. And in defence of the insurance company, and Steve Johnson, the CEO of Suncorp, at that point said as soon as concrete was poured on those levy banks, he would reduce insurance premiums. And he was a man of his word then. He reduced the insurance premiums down. And in those communities, we enjoyed relatively normal insurance premiums for 10 years, around $2,000, $3,000 to insure a home in those communities. 18 months ago, for no apparent reason, despite the fact we've had 3 major flooding events that have tested those levy banks around those communities and have proven to work, there was no claim. We have seen over 300%, 400% and 500% increases in insurance premiums in those communities. And when you ask them the question, what has changed, they kick the dirt, they look at the ground, they know they do not have the answer. They are gouging these people in Western Queensland, so much so that I made a referral to the ACCC. But further investigation warrants of this issue warrants the ACCC to take further investigation into how your insurance premiums are determined. Because with flooding, this comes from the National Flood Information Database. The National Flood Information Database is owned and managed by the Insurance Council of Australia. The Insurance Council of Australia is owned and managed by the Insurance Companies of Australia. Its board of directors are the CEOs and senior executives of all the insurance companies in this country. This is the fox in charge of the henhouse. Overlay the fact that Australia is the only country in the world where the flood data is not made public or transparent to any Australian to know about how their premium is being determined by the Insurance Council of Australia effectively is an abhorrent failure of good governance in this country. How can we let the insurance industry determine how the modelling of our premiums are determined at the whim without any transparency or oversight, public oversight? And so I have written to the ACCC to expand their investigation into the CEO and into the Board of Directors of the Insurance Council of Australia to understand the protocols and the processes of the information in the determination that is sent to the third party to model our insurance premiums in this country. It is abhorrent to think that we would let the Insurance Council, run by the CEOs and senior executives, to be able to determine our premiums without any transparency. And when I spoke to one of our councillors from Western Queensland impacted this week, And it seems as though there's a little bit of a breaking of the ranks in the Insurance Council of Australia. One of the major insurance companies actually confided in one of my mayors that they feared that the data that was coming back for them and to set their premiums from the third party modelling this was sanitised. This is outrageous to think that the Insurance Council of Australia is handing the data back to the insurers that was sanitised. This needs to be investigated by the ACCC, and it needs to be investigated thoroughly to understand the processes and protocols that have been put in place to ensure good governance of fairness to every Australian, but particularly to those in Western Queensland. I have pensioners today that cannot insure their homes, that their homes are now uninsurable. And they're in St George alone. A survey by the local council there has seen 37% of residents no longer have insurance. Insurance for anything. Forget just flood, they can't get insurance for anything on their homes. And then overlay that for a young couple that wants to go and get their first mortgage. And they cannot get one because they can't afford the insurance of $40,000 to $60,000 premium. It is more than double than their loan repayments. Now, if this happened in Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane, there'd be outrage. In fact, Brisbane went through the same flood as us in 2011. There wasn't a levy bank anywhere near Brisbane. Their premiums still sit around $3,000 or $4,000. In St George, Charleville, Roma and Cunnamulla, they sit at $40,000 to $60,000. It is time the ACCC took them on, and if they don't, it is time this parliament takes on the insurance industry and protects every Australian.
Thank you. The member for Isaacs.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak about half of our community, the women of Australia. For generations, women have helped build Australia's democracy, prosperity and social progress. The Australian Commonwealth and the state parliaments were among the first in the world to give women the right to vote. South Australia was first in 1894, the Commonwealth Parliament followed in 1902 and Victoria got there in 1908. It took until 1921 for a woman to be first elected to an Australian Parliament, when Edith Cowan was elected to the Western Australian Legislative Assembly. On entering Parliament, Edith said, and I quote, "Many people think that it was not the wisest thing to send a woman into Parliament. That view was wrong then, and it's wrong now." It took another 2 decades for women to enter the Commonwealth Parliament. In 1943, Enid Lyons became the first woman to be elected to the House of Representatives. In the same election, Dorothy Tangney became the first woman elected to the Senate, representing Western Australia. We've come a long way since then. I'm proud to be a member of a federal parliamentary Labor Party which is more than half women, and to have served in a Labor cabinet that is half women. Women in Parliament improve the way the nation is governed, and they make this Parliament a true reflection of the country that it serves. Law and policy making is strengthened when it takes its direction from the lives of the people it affects and the real difficulties they face. Women in Parliament change the questions that are asked. They widen understanding, lead to better decisions and make our democracy more accountable and representative. Yet across the generations, there have been thousands of Australian women whose contributions are no less important, even if their names do not appear in the history books and their work is not recognised in public life. And today I acknowledge those women. Their contributions deserve our respect, our gratitude and continued commitment to equality. That's the work that Labor has taken on. We've delivered historic reforms to improve women's safety, economic security, healthcare and representation. As Attorney-General, I saw that justice, safety and economic security cannot be separated, and this understanding is reflected in the Albanese Labor government's reforms for women across the law, policy and services. And an example is the Anti-Discrimination and Human Rights Legislation Amendment Respect at Work Act 2022. That legislation was a significant step in fulfilling Labor's commitment to implementing all of the reports of the landmark Respect at Work report completed by Sex Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins and the Human Rights Commission in 2020. The Morrison government failed to implement all of the Respect at Work report, but the Albanese government acted. All 55 recommendations have now been put into effect. The 2022 Act introduced a positive duty to the Sex Discrimination Act 1984, requiring employers to take reasonable and proportionate measures to eliminate unlawful discrimination, including sexual harassment, as far as possible. But of course, changing the law is only part of the task. Justice also depends on the strength of the services women turn to when their safety, housing, family and financial security are at risk. In 2024, through our National Access to Justice Partnership, the Albanese Labor Government significantly increased funding for women's legal services. That funding recognised what women's legal services had made clear for many years. Too many women were being asked to navigate questions of safety, family, housing and financial security without the legal support they need. The same concern for justice and safety led to the much-needed privacy reforms that I introduced in 2024. The Privacy and Other Legislation Amendment Act 2024 created new offences for doxing, which is the malicious publication or distribution of personal information in a way that exposes people to harassment or harm. When personal information is maliciously revealed, the consequences for women can be serious and dangerous. These reforms recognise that the law must respond to this form of harm. That work formed part of our wider effort to make the law more responsive to women's experiences and their calls for safety, dignity and justice. This approach guided our reforms to the Family Law Act and guided our work on justice responses to sexual violence. Too many victims and survivors of sexual violence have said that the justice system is difficult, confronting and traumatic. Their experiences guided the inquiry our government referred to the Australian Law Reform Commission into justice responses to sexual violence. The Commission's report, Safe, Informed and Supported, helped shape the Albanese Labor Government's $21.4 million response, including expanded specialist trauma-informed legal services for victims and survivors. Thank you.
The member for Riverina.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The late, great Governor-General and Chairman of Soils for Life, Michael Jeffrey, in a book written by Colleen McCulloch, a mighty writer, entitled Water is Life, published in 2016, had this to say. River systems and water have played a central role in sustaining human populations, but the United Nations reports that 1/5 of the world's population now live in areas of river water scarcity. Australians have the know-how and ingenuity to redress this situation, but to date we don't seem to have the national will to protect our primary natural asset or make better use of the water we have. The Honourable Michael Jeffrey, Major General, did so much in the space of ensuring that we had the best quality soils and also wanted to ensure that we use water wisely. And in the publication, in the book, Colleen McCulloch wrote this, that rural folk were under pressure. She mentioned that only urban centres possess voting reservoirs large enough to matter politically. There are more members of the Parliament seated on or around the Cumberland Plain than seated in the rest of New South Wales. City people matter, country people do not. And that leads to a national populace grossly ignorant about the intrinsic qualities and functions of water. It's politicians whose foresight extends only to getting re-elected, in the main, share this ignorance. Now that's pretty telling. It's pretty insightful. I just had a meeting with two very passionate people. And the member for Parkes who sits beside me knows these two people very well. It's General Manager Leonie Brown and Mayor Lachlan Ford of Berkshire. And good people. They are very worried, as is the member for Parkes, about Burke and the wider Shire and the wider Western New South Wales. And as the Shadow Water Minister, I would add the Murray-Darling Basin system in its entirety, because we have a government now that doesn't understand the intrinsic value of water. And in her book, Ernest and Hill, it's a 1937 publication, writes of Burke. Burke had 32 hotels and 1,000 thirsty men in the main street, Oxley Street, on Saturday night. In Australia, you estimate the size of a town by its hotel power. And you also measure the size of a town and the worth of a town by its productivity. And Mayor Ford and GM Brown told me a tale, and as I say, the member for that area the member for Parkes, understands this well, and he, like me, is very passionate about this topic, that these towns, which have provided so much for so long, are now being held in the grips of a Murray-Darling Basin plan which does not serve our communities, our river communities, well. And just last week, we saw yet another 86 gigalitres of productive water being taken out of the system. And for what? To be flushed down the mouth of the Murray. And that cost at a time when Labor's debt is spiralling towards $1 trillion. $1 trillion. $430 million. It equated to 34,400 Olympic-sized swimming pools. To take out of farming use, to take away from irrigators to be able to use potentially for fruit and vegetables, rice and cotton and anything else, and to be sent down the river for the environment. Now, our farmers are the world's best environmentalists. They are. They pay for every drop of water. They do. And what they want to do, and what they want to see, is they want to see the Commonwealth Environmental Water Holder, Simon Banks, be accountable for the water they, the organisation, and he, the CHU, overseer, holds and does and maintains in the water space, because the CHU is just taking water out of the system, and it's legislated. I appreciate that. But the CHU, there's no accountability over every drop of water, but there is for our farmers because they're paying for it. The CHU holds, retains, manages, owns 72% of the available water in the Murray-Darling Basin. It is the nation's biggest irrigator. And yet our irrigators are being told that they're the ones who are wasting water. We have a better way. The Coalition has a better way. It's to make sure that we put the infrastructure in place. It's to make sure the CHU is accountable. It's to make sure that we stop the water recovery by stealth and to stop the insidious buybacks.
Thank you. The Minister for Skills and Training.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Today I want to reflect on the Albanese government's budget handed down just last month, in particular what it means to the communities I'm so privileged and proud to represent as member for Scullin. When I got back to Melbourne after the budget week, I went door knocking in Wollert, a suburb that's rapidly growing in the northern end of my electorate. Now, Deputy Speaker, not everyone I spoke to that day had been thumbing through the budget papers, some even that a budget had been handed down, and I'm not surprised by this. Family commitments, work, activities in the community, people are juggling a lot at the moment. But the conversations I had that day and since then at other suburbs, door knocking, at train stations in the morning, reflected on how our budget is delivering from them and also delivering democratically, because we see in these conversations how our Labor government has been listening and how we've been using the opportunity and the obligation we have as national government to make Australian lives better. People are seeing how government can and does make a difference, such as through how we're putting more money back into household budgets. Tax cuts, of course, for every Australian worker. The $1,000 instant tax deduction and the $250 working Australians tax offset, all part of a budget that is working to rebalance a tax system that for too long has taxed workers more on income earned through labour than income that others are fortunate enough to earn through their assets. It's also, of course, a budget that's really focused on bringing that dream of home ownership back within reach for Australians, particularly younger Australians. And that responds to a message that's been delivered to me very directly from, from young people right across the northern suburbs. Younger people who might be renting or still living at home, saving up for a first home of their own, for their parents and their grandparents too, who worry too that their kids won't be able to reach that milestone that they were able to. A dream that is at risk of disappearing for an entire generation of Australians, driven in part by tax breaks for investors that made it easier for people to purchase a 10th home than a first. We know, of course, that rebalancing tax settings won't fix the housing crisis alone. We've got to continue to boost supply. And of course, that's why we're investing so heavily in enabling infrastructure, the nuts and bolts, or in this case more the pipes and the power, to unlock 65,000 new homes while maintaining incentives for new housing construction and for workers to do that work too. We're not standing still. Instead, we're taking action to expand opportunity and security for more Australians in communities like those in our northern suburbs. And people in my electorate also welcome the certainty that comes in the budget from the news that the Medicare Urgent Care Clinic in Epping is here to stay. Since opening in 2024, it's seen 23,000 presentations, around 45 a day, easing pressure on Victoria's busiest emergency department, the Northern Hospital, while saving on medical costs for families right across the community, building on the work that we've done to make the cost of medicines cheaper, bringing PBS medicines down to a maximum cost of $25, $7.70 for concession card holders. We're also delivering for our public hospitals an extra $25 billion in funding so hospitals like the Northern can have more beds and better resourced to service a growing community. All of this is bringing healthcare closer to communities, more accessible and more affordable when we see around the world health systems drifting further away from the people they need to be reaching. Beyond housing and health, the budget's also been focused on helping people get where they need to go safely and efficiently. I'm so pleased to see that $37.4 million that have been invested to continue upgrades along Donnybrook Road, cutting congestion and improving the flow of traffic for motorists in Melbourne's outer northern suburbs. Less time on the road, more time to enjoy at home. This is a budget that's built on listening and recognising the challenges that people face right across our communities. It demonstrates to people that they have been heard and they matter, and the confidence that they placed in our government across 2 elections is not and will not be taken for granted, that we're getting on with the job that they have tasked us with doing. And Deputy Speaker, today I was absolutely thrilled to read in the Herald Sun that Boobuk Willem Aboriginal Children's and Families Centre was recognised for the extraordinary work it does in educating young First Nations people. Boobuk Willem is an amazing facility, and early learning, early education and care is only the tip of the iceberg for what it delivers for Aboriginal communities in Melbourne's north. So to Lisa Thorpe and her amazing team there, I look forward to seeing you when I'm back in town, but I'm so pleased to see the work that you do and the impact it has recognised more broadly.
Thank you. The question is that the motion be agreed to. All of that opinion say aye, of the contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. on Monday the 29th of June 2026.